They don't care if they're destroying lives and livelihoods and families. They don't care. They want the conviction, and they know that the average person cannot afford to defend themselves. So all they have to do is trump up some charges, and they're not using that. That's, an ironic term in the end because of all they've done to the president. But ultimately, they make up charges. They can destroy your life. They will destroy your family structure. They will cause, turmoil and chaos and havoc for everyone involved. And they don't care. And they don't
No.
issue apologies when they're wrong. They don't care. So,
And this is the free country, America, the
well,
civilized
yeah,
world.
but they've weaponized their bureau against America and American citizens. It's become a weapon against innocent people. Not to say that they don't convict guilty people. We know that they do that. But they also, when they want something else, in your instance, they wanted your knowledge and your information. They didn't know how to handle you because they weren't Vinny Prezzuti, who was your handler for 18 plus years.
Oh, you remember his name.
Yeah, of course. So, they weren't him. They didn't know he knew how to handle you. He knew how you worked and how you worked most productively for the FBI. The way that C5 worked, that was the unit that arrested you.
That's right.
The way that they worked is they had to have something over your head in order to leverage you to work for them. They didn't know how you worked. They didn't care that you've never worn a wire. They didn't care that you had never testified. They didn't care that your persona and all of your information was private and protected by Vinny for all those years. It was productive for him to do that because he wouldn't have been as successful an agent without that. If you weren't working the streets for him, his career probably would have, been half of what it ended up being before he retired. So, they didn't know how to deal with that situation and handling you, and they did everything wrong. Every single thing they did was wrong in handling you. If they had just come, and you and I had this conversation several times when we could talk during the trial. I sat many, many nights with Jose Muniz, who was your defense attorney, and discussed how they dealt with things. And it was so easy to find their weaknesses. And in fact, there was something that came up. Well, let's go back to the suppression, because let's finish that, and then we can get on to all this other crazy stuff with your 302s and everything else.
Okay.
So the second gun that they found, and this was a funny story in court. I remember this, and even the jury laughed at it, because the FBI agents that had you held hostage in your house for hours, handcuffed in your foyer, had asked you, where was the second gun? And what did you tell them?
Oh, yeah. They asked me if there was any more guns. I said, all right, there's one more in the iron box. It's in the garage. And the guy, go ahead.
Yeah. So they spent a good hour looking for this iron box in the garage. But they did it. They're looking for this metal lock box or some kind of metal toolbox. And it turned out it was a physical iron, like that you iron your pants. What if?
Yeah.
So,
I was able to fit the gun in the box because it was big, because it's held a regular iron. So when I said it's in the iron box, even Judge Buchwald was laughing at it. She thought it was hysterical. She says she just shook her head, because they said, well, it was in the iron box, but just not the iron box we thought it was in. And they kept coming back to me in the foyer like 2 or 3 times. Are you sure you got an iron box? You lying to us? Are you lying to us? And I said, it's in the iron box. But see, that's how good I hid the gun. And actually, Judge Buchwald had mentioned that. She says he knew he wasn't allowed to have guns, so he didn't display them out in the open. He made sure nobody found them. And look, they looked for it, and they couldn't find it for like, it was almost an hour. That's why she knew that the guy said, one of the agents said that he saw the something shiny sticking out of the bag, and that was a total lie right there.
She could
was
picture
pretty
in
smart.
her. Yes, but she could picture in her head exactly what you were describing, that it was this paper shopping bag with the wire handles, like those cord handles, and you had to fold them under to stick it under that shelf. And so she said, I could understand you looked in the closet. She said, but remember, she pointed out too, when she was trying to she gave them every chance possible
Yeah.
to validate their reasons for being in the house. Did you see somebody looking through the blinds? She must have asked them that 10 times
Yeah.
at the trial.
Sh
Did you see
she'll
somebody looking through the blinds so that you thought someone was in the house? No.
Yeah.
And
She
they
said,
said
"Did you
no
hear a
every time.
toilet flush?"
Did you hear a toilet flush? Did you hear a
Yeah.
noise? Did you check the basement and the attic? No. They only
Yeah. That's
searched the
right.
main floor. And she said, if you were seriously doing a safety check to make sure there was nobody in the house that was going to harm you or your personnel, why wouldn't you check the attic and the basement?
Exactly. And the legal term, if I remember, I think she says, that they call it a protective sweep,
Mhm.
and that's only
Yeah,
lasts a protective sweep is no longer than 5 minutes, 6 max, she said.
yeah, and they were in there for hours. So
Yes.
yeah, and they didn't find the only thing they found were the two guns, and that's where the case law came in because they were able to. And I just want to clarify, Joe. I'm not going to use legal terms because I know that there are a lot of laymen that watch your show. So I'm
Okay.
not trying to be, you know, Biggie the brain, the legal whatever. I just want to make things clear for people who are watching and listening
Appreciate it.
to your
Appreciate it.
program because it's important that they understand how the FBI is working against American citizens and against America. And that's also why I'm not, um, disclosing my identity because the things that they've done, we've seen it done to people in power. We've seen it done to all kinds of to journalists, to all kinds of people who go against their grain.
Mhm.
And that's not the way the legal system is supposed to function. The DOJ
No.
is a hot mess. We have corrupt judges. We have a judge that just put a male rapist in a prison with women because he said he identifies as a guy or as a female and couldn't justify, there's a lot of stuff going on that's just doesn't make sense. I mean, the guy's a
Right.
rapist and you put him in a women's prison. Smart. Good job, Judge. So this is what's going on with the DOJ at this time. And even,
But I
this
do
was
have
in
to give a little
2010.
credit. Yes, but I do have to give a little credit to Judge Buchwald. If you remember in the beginning of my when I first was with her, like when I first was, got to court and everything like that, she actually was more on the FBI side, except when she read my all my stuff that I did over the years, and
Yeah, the transcript from the FBI.
yes, she had said, "Well, what did Mr. Barone contribute to what did he do for 18 years?" He said, "Well, they said they gave a little some license plates, numbers, some phone numbers, no, but not
Yeah, that
really
was in
much." She
his
says,
closing. That was in
"Yeah,
his closing in
exactly.
Zach's
Yeah."
closing. The
And
the
then the file was how big when they looked, they says, "Well," she said, "Whoa, I want to see that in camera." But if you remember how her demeanor changed when she came out after reading what I did and after
right.
all the things I did, yeah.
But a big part of that also that I saw going through the whole process was that you didn't have representation. Even though you had a lawyer, Roy Koltzar was a con artist and a scammer. And he believed that it was okay to steal from his clients because he said, well, they're criminals. That's how he justified it.
Yes.
They're charged with a crime, so it's okay if I rob them of money. Um, and you didn't have someone in there. I remember being in the early parts of the case and Roy coming into court and coming late, which is disrespectful to the judge,
Mhm.
um, and the defense, and also to the prosecutors, but also
And to me.
standing in court and yeah, well, you're the defense,
Yeah,
and
oh, okay.
standing in court, yeah, standing in court and reciting poetry rather than you know using using legal cases, using case law. He was standing in court, reciting poetry. And I remember just sitting there shaking my head. And the number of meetings that I had with him, he was just a slimy. I would leave and I would feel like, if I got to go take a shower now, because I was around somebody that was so grimy
Yeah.
that, he was just, But
Well, I got him disbarred later on, as you remember.
yes, yes, I helped with that to some degree,
Mhm.
um, with the letters to the review board, and he had committed so many atrocities against other people that were his clients that it all built up. He was
Yeah.
stealing money. Even when he was suspended, when we were doing his going through the disbarment process, it came out that he was still going down to the MCD, or what is it? That's called it.
MDC.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
He, that he was still going down there and taking retainers from people to
I know.
represent them when he
And he
wasn't
wasn't even
even
supposed to be practicing. That's right.
practicing. Yeah, exactly.